After understanding what respiration is all about, now let us familiarize ourselves with the various organs which are involved in this organ system and the various physiological functions which are carried out. So for now in this lesson we are going to get to know what are the organs of human respiratory system. So we divide the human respiratory system into two parts in order to understand what are the organs. So the first part of human respiratory system is the conducting part and the second one is exchange part. Now entirely this human respiratory system would have various parts in which the air would be conducted, because it is all about the transport of gases, the exchange of gases. So one part would be conducting the gases, the oxygen would be taken inside, carbon dioxide would be thrown outside, because carbon dioxide is a waste metabolic substance and oxygen is required for metabolism. So we need to make sure that there is continuous exchange of gases which is taking place, that gas is inhaled and one gas is exhaled depending on their metabolic utility. And other is that we have to see that how that exchange of gases takes place, what is the involvement of various tissues inside it, what is the physiology behind it. So for understanding that, we need to know which organs play a crucial role in the respiratory system. So we start with, because it is respiratory system, whenever you are understanding it, make sure you are taking care of your own system as well. Like if I talk about external nares, you know that these are the nostrils. If I have to tell you, the nostrils from where the air is taken inside, these two orifices are known as external nares. You will have in your nose as well, both of them. The external nares, they open into the nasal chamber, which is nostrils. Like people who are in the habit of digging their noses, wherever that finger goes, that is nostrils, and wherever we feel itching, this region inside, those are the nostrils. So this is basically the air is being taken out. This entire conducting part is responsible for maintaining the gradient, pressure gradient, due to which air can be inhaled and exhaled, because it is totally a physical process. So we arrive to the nostrils. These nostrils, they open up into nasopharynx. Now try to recall, if ever you have put nasal drops in your nose, they go inside your mouth. You can feel the taste of that, because these nostrils and the nasal chamber, it opens up into the part of pharynx known as nasopharynx. Alright, the nasopharynx would further open up into glottis. This you can understand when we understand this point from a video, which will be a better explanation. But for once, you need to understand where entire air is going, what are the names of the various organs. Just familiarize yourself with that the nasopharynx would open up into a glottis, and that glottis is having a very important part, cartilaginous box known as larynx. And the voice that comes from our mouth, the voice is basically, it is being generated in the cartilaginous box of the larynx, where the cartilaginous rings, they take the vibrations and the sound is being produced. This nasopharynx, as it opens into glottis, you know there is a flap over the larynx. Glottis is sort of divergent. Supposedly this is your esophagus, I am telling you, supposedly this is your esophagus and the windpipe lies behind it. So this region that separates basically the windpipe, just for understanding purpose, it has nothing, it doesn't look like this inside your body. Just for understanding purpose, you need to make clear that this windpipe would be covered by a muscular flap known as epiglottis. Okay, this would be food pipe, this is the windpipe. The other name for windpipe, you have been using this name since your childhood, that would be trachea. So this trachea has a cartilaginous covering of epiglottis, which makes sure that the food particles don't go inside your windpipe, and this entire region is known as larynx. Just for basic understanding, I am telling you that supposedly this part is that of your mouth that you are inhaling. There would be a region that would be separating the esophagus and the windpipe, and that region would be glottis, because larynx, because it is surrounded by cartilaginous rings, it is able to produce the sounds. And somewhat down this larynx, you would have epiglottis, which would make sure that the food particles do not get inside the windpipe. So we have glottis followed by larynx. Now this larynx would open up into windpipe. This diagram is pretty much confusing, I guess, but I made it just to make you understand that there is a sort of diversion. Like supposedly this is the wide area of the nasopharynx, it would get diverted towards the windpipe. There would be a glottis that would be present, that glottis would have further larynx, and that glottis will have covering of the cartilaginous flap known as epiglottis. This glottis is going to have that and making sure that food doesn't enter your windpipe. Then it is followed by, once the wind has entered the glottis, it would enter larynx, where the cartilaginous rings would produce the sound that you can hear from my, it is coming from my larynx basically. And there is an Adam's apple, you might be knowing, present in males, okay. It is absent in females, which is responsible for giving a protrusion over here. It is responsible for giving that low pitched voice to the male voice, and this larynx opens up into trachea. Now this trachea is the food pipe basically. Pardon me, it's not the food pipe, it's the windpipe. Again there are rings of cartilage, and this trachea would bifurcate into the next classification, that would be bronchus. Singular would be bronchus and plural would be bronchi, okay. So this first bifurcation of trachea, which again has cartilaginous rings around it, is known as bronchi, okay. It is primary bronchi. This trachea, it extends till 5th thoracic vertebrae. These things, whichever I am speaking over here, they are to be mugged up. You need to remember up till which vertebrae trachea goes singularly, then it bifurcates at around the 5th vertebrae of the vertebral column in humans. Now, this trachea, once it has bifurcated, it would further branch out into secondary ones. Secondary ones would branch out into tertiary ones, and there would be a profuse branching which would be observed in the part of lungs, alright. And at the end of each bronchiole, so we get to know another word, bronchiole, there would be a bag, muscular bag with a duct around it, that would be known as alveoli. So we come across 3 new words, that is bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli along with their ducts. Now when I have to explain you about primary and tertiary and secondary bronchi, I need not explain that the first division of the trachea would be primary. When it further branches, it would be secondary bronchi and it would be further tertiary bronchi. This tertiary bronchi would open up into the bronchioles. The bronchioles are the direct branchings which are in contact with alveoli. Now the last exchange part that we study is alveoli. Alveoli are alveolar sacs as we call them. They are muscular bags in which the exchange of gases takes place. Now what you have to remember, this is not how we study respiratory system. We do talk about very important organ of respiratory system, that is lungs. So this basically is the part of respiratory system and a very important organ inside which this entire part is located. Those are lungs. We have a pair of lungs and this bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli will become the part of lungs. So we have 2 lungs which have such sac-like structure, alright. One is left lung, other is right lung. Because we have our heart somewhat towards left, so there is a cardiac notch which is present, this sort of cardiac notch which is present towards the left lung. This is the left lung. It is having 2 lobes. Please remember, left lung is smaller in size as compared to the right lung which has 3 lobes. I hope I am clear with what I am trying to explain is that there are two parts in the respiratory system. First part is the conducting part. Till here we see the conducting part. That means air would come inside through the channels which we are talking about right here. Air would come from here till here, it would reach over here. All this would be physically driven process, and once it enters these alveolar sacs, then the exchange of gases will take place. Now talking about lungs, our lungs are paired. We know that this particular region is known as cardiac notch. We have heart over here. Okay, it is, these lungs are situated on a muscular flap known as diaphragm, which is very important for breathing mechanism. We shall see how. The muscular flap is diaphragm. Towards the dorsal side, as we talk about in our body, towards the dorsal side, there is sternum and the rib cage which surrounds these lungs. Okay, there is a rib cage, proper rib cage. The ribs are surrounding the lungs, and sternum is present in this trachea, right below this trachea. If we are seeing the dorsal body, and towards the ventral side, we have the vertebral column. That is for sure. The ribs are encaging this entire a pair of lungs and the trachea and bronchioles and heart, of course. So this is what a lung looks like, a pair of lung looks like, and this is having a membrane. Every organ in our body is having a membranous entity, so do lungs. This membrane is known as pleural membrane. Okay. Pleural membrane is present which surrounds the lungs, and this pleural membrane is having, this is outer, this is inner membrane, and inside the pleural membrane there would be pleural fluid which would be present. Okay, this pleural fluid will be responsible for maintaining a lubricated condition so that least friction is created in the lungs. So this is all about the lungs that we need to understand. Now coming to the conduction part and the exchange part, the air would enter the nostrils, it would pass to the nasal chamber, it would enter the nasopharynx. From nasopharynx, making sure that it enters the windpipe, it will pass glottis and larynx. It would open up into the cartilaginous trachea. Primary bronchi would also be little bit cartilaginous. Then secondary bronchi and tertiary and bronchioles would be part of the lungs. Now this part is responsible for taking up the oxygen or the air, whatever is being taken, and giving out the carbon dioxide, because this exchange part is having squamous epithelium, very thin squamous epithelium, and a lot of supply of blood which takes up the gas whichever is required according to the gradient that is present, partial pressure difference I am talking about over here, and then the gases can be passed. They can be exchanged and they can be thrown out again according to the gradient, partial pressure gradient that would be present. So this way the air comes inside, and if the air is to be thrown out, it would be taken up in the alveoli. From alveoli it would be passed on to the bronchioles. So the pressure difference would be there. Supposedly I am taking up inside, the air is being taken up inside, then alveoli would be at least pressure. The highest pressure that would be formed would be in outside air. It would be taken up in external nares. Then it would be going to nostrils, from there it would enter the nasopharynx, then to glottis, larynx, if some sort of sound is to be made, then it would enter trachea, and then the trachea bifurcates into bronchi, secondary bronchi, then this is tertiary bronchi, and then the last one is bronchioles. These bronchioles are in contact with the ducts of alveoli, and the alveoli is the part where the exchange of gases takes place. Now if the air is to be thrown out, like if it is carbon dioxide that is to be thrown out, then the passage will be totally opposite. We have to take it in reverse way. Alright, so this is all about understanding the organs of respiratory system in human beings. Next we are going to see that how this respiration process takes place with a video illustration.